I woke up from surgery, and my son wasn't there. No missed calls. No message. Just an empty hospital room and a nurse asking who would be picking me up. While I was still recovering, something else was happening. My credit card was being used hundreds of miles away. Not by a stranger. By my own family. They said it was just a trip. They said I wouldn't mind. They said they were only trying to help. But that help cost me my peace, my trust, and nearly my independence. My name is Evelyn Carter. I'm 73 years old, and until recently, I believed I had raised a good man. For most of my life, I was the kind of mother who put everyone else first. After my husband passed away more than a decade ago, my world became very small and very focused. Everything I did revolved around my son. I worked long hours for years, first as an office administrator and later managing schedules for a medical supply company in Jacksonville, Florida. I wasn't rich, but I was careful. I saved. I planned. I believed that if I stayed responsible, I'd never be a burden to anyone. Especially not to my family. My son, Ryan, was my only child. I helped him through college, assisted with his wedding expenses, and when he and his wife bought their first home, I contributed part of the down payment. When their children were born, two bright, energetic kids, I became the reliable grandmother. Babysitting, school pickups, meals, holidays. I was always there. Ryan married a woman named Melissa. From the beginning, our relationship was polite but distant. I often felt more like a resource than a relative, but I kept those feelings to myself. I loved my son, and I wanted to stay close to my grandchildren. Financially, I lived modestly. I relied on my late husband's pension, Social Security, and a small savings account I'd built over decades. I kept one credit card strictly for emergencies and paid it off every month without fail. I believed preparation was protection. Then, one morning in early spring, everything unraveled. I'd been feeling unwell for weeks, sharp pains that came and went. Like many people my age, I ignored it. I told myself it was nothing serious. But that Tuesday morning, the pain became unbearable. I could barely stand. I called Ryan. I remember struggling to breathe as I told him something was wrong, that I needed help. He sounded distracted. "Mom, I'm at work," he said. "Can't you just call an ambulance?" Those words should have warned me. I did call one. At the hospital, everything moved fast. Tests. Scans. Doctors speaking in calm but urgent voices. My appendix was dangerously inflamed. Surgery couldn't wait. As they prepared me, a nurse asked for my emergency contact. Without hesitation, I gave them Ryan's number. Because he was my son. Because I trusted him. Because I never imagined what would happen next. When I woke up after surgery, the first thing I noticed was the silence. No familiar voice. No hand holding mine. Just the steady beeping of a monitor and a dull ache in my abdomen. A nurse leaned over and told me the operation had gone well. I was lucky they caught it in time. At my age, complications could have been serious. I asked if my son had arrived. She checked the chart, then shook her head. "No one's come yet," she said gently. I told myself not to overthink it. Ryan had work. He had children. Life was busy. I didn't want to be that mother, the one who expected everything to stop for her. Still, the hours passed slowly. By the afternoon, I was allowed to sip water and sit up slightly. My phone rested on the small hospital table beside me. I checked it every few minutes, hoping to see his name light up the screen. Nothing. That evening, a different nurse came in to go over discharge paperwork and medication. She asked again who would be picking me up once I was cleared to leave. I hesitated. "I suppose my son," I said, though my voice lacked confidence. She smiled politely, but her eyes lingered on me longer than necessary, like she'd seen this situation before. Ryan finally called that night. Not to ask how I was feeling. Not to apologize for not coming. He sounded rushed. "Mom, Melissa and I were already planning a trip with the kids," he said. "It's been booked for months. We didn't expect this to happen now." I stared at the ceiling, trying to process his words. A trip. While I was lying in a hospital bed, barely able to move, my son was explaining why his vacation mattered more. "I'll check in on you later," he added. "Don't worry so much." After the call ended, I turned my face toward the wall and cried quietly. Not because of the pain, but because I suddenly felt very old. The next morning, I was discharged. No family came. A hospital transport aide wheeled me to the exit and helped me into a rideshare I paid for myself. As the car pulled away, I watched the building disappear behind me and wondered how things had changed so quickly. When I got home, my answering machine was full, not with messages from Ryan, but from billing departments, hospital charges, anesthesiology fees, prescription confirmations. I wasn't panicked. I had insurance. I had savings. I had always managed my finances carefully. Still, something felt off. That evening, while sorting through paperwork, I noticed an unfamiliar notification on my phone, an alert from my credit card company. A charge I didn't recognize. It wasn't large. At least not yet. The notification stayed on my mind all night. Early the next morning, I reached for my glasses and checked my credit card app again. I told myself there had to be a simple explanation. A delayed charge. A mistake. But the transaction was still there. It was for a hotel in Orlando. I hadn't traveled in years. Scrolling further, I felt my chest tighten. There were more charges. A theme park ticket vendor. A rental car company. Restaurants I had never heard of. The total wasn't enormous yet, but it was growing. I called the customer service number on the back of my card. After a long wait, a representative confirmed what I already suspected. The card had been used multiple times over the past 2 days. I asked where. She read the locations slowly, one by one. Every charge was in the same city. Orlando. I didn't need to ask who was there. My hands trembled as I ended the call. I dialed Ryan's number. He answered on the third ring, cheerful and relaxed. In the background, I could hear children laughing. "Mom, what's up?" I told him about the charges. There was a pause. Then he laughed. "Oh, that," he said. "Yeah, I used your card." I waited for him to explain. To apologize. To say it was temporary. Instead, he continued casually, like we were discussing groceries. "We were short on funds for the trip," he said. "I figured it wouldn't be a big deal. You weren't using it anyway." I reminded him that the card was for emergencies. That I had never given permission for this. "Relax," he replied. "We'll pay you back later." Later. The word echoed in my head. I asked how much had been charged so far. He didn't know. Or he didn't want to say. When I hung up, I sat very still at the kitchen table, staring at the stack of medical paperwork in front of me. I had just come home from surgery. I was still in pain. And somehow, without asking, my son had decided my money was available. I felt foolish. Not because of the money, but because of the trust. That afternoon, more alerts came in. Souvenirs. Meals. Entertainment. Each notification felt like a small cut. By evening, the total had passed an amount I was no longer comfortable ignoring. I realized then that this wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a decision they had made without me. And for the first time, I wondered how far they were willing to go. That night, I didn't sleep. Every time my phone buzzed, my stomach tightened. I stopped checking the app because I already knew what I would see. By morning, I had made a decision. I called the credit card company again. This time, my voice was steady. I told them the charges were unauthorized. There was a long pause on the line. Then the representative asked me a series of questions: where I lived, whether I still had the card in my possession, whether anyone else had been given permission to use it. I answered honestly. No, I had not approved these charges. No, this was not an emergency. Yes, I still had the card. She explained my options carefully. The card could be frozen immediately. A new one could be issued. A fraud report could be opened. My heart pounded as I listened. Freezing the card would cut them off instantly. I knew what that would mean. They were on vacation. They were relying on my money. And once the card stopped working, they would know exactly what I had done. I hesitated for only a moment. Then I said yes. The card was frozen. The charges stopped. The silence that followed felt heavy, but also relieving. 2 hours later, my phone rang. It was Ryan. He wasn't laughing this time. "What did you do?" he demanded. I told him calmly that I had canceled the card, that the charges were not approved, that I needed my money secure, especially after surgery. His tone changed instantly. "You embarrassed us," he said. "We're here with the kids. Do you have any idea how this looks?" I reminded him that I had just been in the hospital. He sighed loudly, as if I were the inconvenience. Melissa got on the phone. She spoke slowly, carefully, like she was explaining something to a child. "We assumed you wouldn't mind helping," she said. "You've always been generous. We didn't think you'd react like this." That word, assumed, hit me harder than any accusation. They hadn't asked. They hadn't checked. They had decided. I told them I needed time, that I was recovering, that I didn't want to discuss money while I was healing. Ryan accused me of being selfish. Melissa said I was overreacting. When the call ended, my hands were shaking, but my mind was clear. For the first time, I had said no, and they did not take it well. After I canceled the card, the calls stopped. At first, the silence felt like peace. Then it started to feel like punishment. Days passed without a single message. No updates about the children. No check-in about my recovery. It was as if I had suddenly become invisible. When Ryan finally reached out, it wasn't to ask how I was healing. He wanted to talk about my attitude. He said I had embarrassed his family, that I had made things difficult for them, that Melissa was deeply upset by how I had handled the situation. I listened quietly. Then he said something that made my chest tighten. "You're acting like we did something wrong," he said. "But everything we've done was to help you." Help. That word again. They began reframing everything. Using my card without permission became support. Ignoring me in the hospital became bad timing. Locking me out emotionally became setting boundaries. They told relatives I was confused, that I was emotional after surgery. That stress had made me irrational. I started receiving phone calls from family members, people who hadn't spoken to me in years, suddenly urging me to apologize. "Just let it go," one of them said. "They're your family," another reminded me. I began to doubt myself. Late at night, lying alone in bed, I replayed the conversations over and over. I wondered if I really had overreacted. If maybe I should have waited. If my need for control had gone too far. That doubt was the most frightening part. Because once you start questioning your own reality, it becomes very easy for others to define it for you. A week later, Ryan sent a long message. It wasn't an apology. It was a list. Everything I had ever done wrong as a mother. Every time I had interfered. Every moment he claimed I had made his life harder. At the end, he wrote, "We need space until you can be more reasonable." I stared at my phone for a long time. Then I set it down. Something inside me finally settled. This wasn't about money anymore. It was about control. And if I didn't protect myself now, this pattern would only get worse. After Ryan's message, I didn't respond right away. For the first time in my life, I allowed myself to sit with the truth instead of explaining it away. I contacted my bank and moved my accounts. I updated my passwords. I removed my son as an authorized contact on everything from medical forms to financial records. Each small step felt heavy, but it also felt necessary. I spoke with a financial advisor recommended by a friend, someone who worked specifically with seniors. She didn't rush me. She didn't minimize what had happened. She called it what it was: financial abuse. Hearing those words out loud was painful, but also clarifying. I realized how easily concern can be used as a cover for control, especially when age enters the picture. People assume you're fragile, that you won't notice, that you won't fight back. They're wrong. I wrote Ryan one final message. I kept it short. I told him I loved him. I told him I was stepping back. And I told him my finances were no longer open for discussion. He didn't reply, and that was answer enough. My recovery took time, not just physically, but emotionally. I learned to trust my instincts again. I stopped apologizing for protecting myself. I see my grandchildren occasionally, through extended family. I miss them deeply, but I no longer sacrifice my well-being to keep the peace. The credit card was eventually resolved. Some charges were reversed. Others I paid myself simply to close the chapter. Peace, I learned, sometimes costs money. But it costs much more to give it away. I'm sharing this story because situations like mine don't start with theft. They start with silence. With small permissions. With the belief that love means access. If you're watching this and something feels familiar, please listen to that feeling. Protect your boundaries. Protect your independence. Even from the people you love. Especially from the people you love.